Hello and welcome to episode 54 of the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. Whether you're a Rockies fan or just a baseball person, you can follow us at Rockies Now on all of your favorite social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Thanks for joining with us today. I'm your host, Steven. Co host Tom is here. Tom, how'd you like that intro?
I loved it. It is awesome. It definitely starts off each of our episodes moving forward with a bit of a bang.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this for a while, and we were like, "Hey, we need an intro, some sort of intro, because everyone now has one, I guess, these days." So, I just kind of like did some research online this past week. I was like, you know what? I'm bored to death. I need to get in on this thing, and found some music and worked on the intro video. So, and once I listened to it, I was like, yeah, we're using this. So. That was really, really cool. So love the music. So yeah, so today's pod, we're going to be doing some of the fun one, getting away from some of the news in the Rockies games. We're going to be talking about our favorite baseball movies. This is something I think we planned like around Christmas time or something like that. We were like, hey, with the Oscars going on in March, we need to get on this thing and talk about our favorite baseball movies. And so we were like, you know what, let's do it. And so that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So Tom, I'm curious to see what your top five are.
Yeah, like as I told you in our pre-production meeting here, the one numbers 1 through 4 were fairly easy for me to put together and rank and go with. Whereas number 5, I was back and forth around between 3 or 4 movies. It was a tough call, but yeah, I like my list, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing yours as well.
Yeah, I was, I told Tom right before we started, I was watching like basically almost every single baseball movie you could think of, like coming up to this day. And I actually just finished one like an hour ago, right before I started. And it was actually Angels in the Outfield, rewatching it. And it's just like, and of course, we'll talk about all the movies, our top five and some honorable mentions in a minute. But like Angels in the Outfield, after like the first, I don't know, like 20, 30 minutes, it's like there's a lot of funny stuff and like a lot of funny lines. And I like the big dude that like is just always hitting. He somehow, gets that home run. And it's a classic. I know it's, more designed for like small kids and guys and all that, but it's a baseball movie for everyone. I mean, it's perfect. So um I guess we can get going. Tom, why not get started and give your number five?
Okay, well, unless should we start with the ranking, or should I give my honorable mentions before I
Let's
reveal my
let's do
top?
honorable mentions first. Let's do that.
Okay, well, just a couple of honorable mentions. Well, first of all, the most recent new baseball movie that I watched it was a documentary that I recommend. I watched The Captain a couple months ago. That was the first. It was the documentary on ESPN about Derek Jeter. That is one I recommend. Another 30 for 30s. Two others that I really enjoy were Catching Hell. Me being from Chicago, I know the whole what happened in the 2003 NLCS between the then Florida Marlins, now Miami Marlins, and Chicago Cubs with the infamous Steve Bartman game of Game 6 in Chicago. So that's something, whether you're a Cubs fan or not, it's one I would enjoy. I recommend. Another one, Once Upon a Time in Queens, which was a great 4-part documentary done about the 1986 Mets, phenomenal team. And two other documentaries that I think are very underrated, not talked about much. One is called Knuckleball. It's a documentary about a very, I would say, how do I put this? A very suspect, controversial pitch, is what I like to call it, the knuckleball. Because if everyone ever understands real quick, the knuckleball is a pitch you want to throw with as little spin as possible. With spin rate being such a big thing, it's a very interesting documentary about the few successful knuckleball pitchers, such as the recently passed away Tim Wakefield. May he he and his wife rest in peace. Also, Phil Niekro is another one. It's a whole little, also R.A. Dickey. It's a whole fraternity of them, and you'll watch. It's enjoyable. And then pivoting, a documentary called Fastball, narrated by Kevin Costner, which explores the evolution of the fastball from way back in the early days of baseball all the way up until the modern days of baseball, where basically so many people can hit triple digits nowadays. So any of those documentaries are honorable mentions for me. Two movies that were honorable mentions for me that did not make my list was A League of Their Own, which is the story about the women's baseball league during the days of World War II. So it stars actors such as Gina Davis, and also Madonna's in it, Tom Hanks, who delivers one of the most funny movie lines of all time. There's no crying in baseball. So that's a classic part right there. And then last one I'll say, this one I was so close, but unfortunately it did not crack the top 5. Field of Dreams, a fantastic movie about starring Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones, and Ray Liotta, about of Man in Iowa. That's just such a great movie, but unfortunately, it didn't. It would just missed my top five. So those are some honorable mentions that I recommend to anyone who enjoys baseball and a good movie, either documentary or Hollywood film about baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I do have one or two honorable mentions. I guess
Mhm.
one of them is 21 Days. It's a Rockies documentary about the 2007 season. I mean, it's not super popular out there, but I think it's available on YouTube.
Mm.
Very, very good. You know, it's kind of long, but again, it's worth it, especially if you're a Rocks fan. Um, and then the other honorable mention, I I'm hmm, yeah, because I was just thinking about this the other day, and I think then I might go with the Natural. It's a great baseball movie. I mean, you know, um, especially the ending. It's always cool to hear the music because the Rangers they have that famous music at the end where he hits the home runs. Spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the movie already, where are you? Where have you been? But great movie. I love the scene where he's hitting batting practice and using that bat, and he's telling the dude that he made that bat when he was a kid, and how it was like the tree was struck from a lightning bolt, and he used that bat, and he's like, now go shag some balls in the outfield. I love that part. And then but yeah, it's overall a great movie. So I guess those are my two honorable mentions. But I guess if you want to, you can get to number five. Or if you have any other honorable mentions, you can do so.
No, not that. Well, there's a couple others I can go off the top of my head, but I don't want to
Mhm.
bore people because I'm a movie buff where it comes to
Yeah.
baseball. It's my favorite sport. So let's just move on to number five. Starting number five, I'm going to go with 42, the story about Jackie Robinson's
Mhm.
breaking the color barrier into the major leagues, becoming the first African American baseball player in Major League Baseball during the modern era. Um, it's the thing is the story, it marks such a huge evolution, and there's so many different evolutions, whether it's we're talking about the sport of baseball or our society in general. This event in history rings to both. It was an evolutionary part for baseball and society when he broke the color barrier, when the Brooklyn Dodgers signed him. And I do, and of course, another thing is Harrison Ford is one of my favorite actors. I think his portrayal of Branch Rickey was phenomenal. What and I have my favorite scene in the movie is that scene when Jackie is having a horrible. He's just struggling with the
Mhm.
pressure around him and all the acts of racism against him, and he goes in the tunnel and just takes the bat and smashes it against the wall, and he just. He's so overwhelmed mentally and emotionally, and it's understandable. I can't speak from personal experience, but it's just I can't imagine what was on his shoulders and how he just felt. And then Branch Rickey comes in there and gives him the speech saying, I like one key thing that he says that Ford said that Branch Rickey says to me, says, "You're medicine, kid. You're
Mhm.
medicine." And I take that as the world
Yeah.
is sick and he can
Yeah.
be medicine that can really help help not the world but society, be a medicine for somewhat of a kind of medicine that can help society. And I think
Mhm.
that's very powerful. And also, another favorite scene of mine is um, when Reese comes over, Tim puts an arm around him, and they look around and they see people in the stands. And they, my two favorite lines in that movie is when in that scene he goes, "Maybe tomorrow we're 42, so nobody can tell us apart." And of
Mhm.
course, we all know where the evolution of that is. We do have Jackie Robinson today, where everybody wears 42, and another thing later in the scene, later in the movie, where I love the line also where he says, I don't think it matters what I believe, only what I do.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
again, it's a movie that's so powerful and speaks and just covers such a very huge a very huge event in our both in the sport and in our society.
Yeah, and speaking of that movie, I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I wrote, about Jackie Robinson in college just a couple years ago. It was a college paper, and when I started reading the research, I was just like my mouth was dropped open, like because of some of the stuff that happened in his life and some of the hate that he got everywhere, and death threats, whatever. But the movie, it's really really good. So yeah, great movie. I guess with my number five. Um, I'm gonna go with I might go with A League of Their Own. Again, with Tom Hanks and everything. It's a classic one. Again, with that famous line, "There's no crying in baseball." It's a wonderful movie. And then yeah, again, with some of the old classic movies like that, and the movies that were made in the 70s and 80s, um, you know, I guess here's another one I kind of forgot to put on my honorable mention was Eight Men Out, because my brother for a long time was like, "Hey, you need to watch this movie," and again, it has somewhat of a sad trend to it, because feeling to it, because again, like it's the World Series, man. Like, and for them to kind of do what they did, and with those eight ball players that lost on purpose, lost the World Series on purpose. It's kind of sad, but again, there's some funny moments and in Eight Men Out, and it'll make you chuckle. I mean, every single baseball movie has that, and I think it was perfect. But it was in between A League of Their Own and Eight Men Out, and I was like, you know what, A League of Their Own. So I'm going with A League of Your Own at number five. So yeah.
Definitely a
Yeah.
classic, and like, sorry, go ahead, you done.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say we can start off going with number four.
Okay. Well, yeah, A League of Their Own, like I said, good choice.
Hmm.
Here's see for number 4, excuse me. This was the movie that when I was a very young kid got me to love the game of baseball, and that's The Sandlot. I told myself one thing I told myself is I have to always think back to that movie and just the not just the love of it, but also drew me to the love of the sport, but also just the so many classic me being a young kid, just remembering so many classic lines again. Some classic lines me, "You're killing me, Smalls," or "You play ball like a girl," or one of my as I got older and I came to understand things like that, one of my another favorite line of mine is when James Earl Jones holding the baseball and asks him about the baseball, and he tells him it's signed by Babe Ruth, and he goes, "I take it back. You're not in trouble. You're dead where you stand." S and, excuse me. And so just, and for me, like, for example, that is my favorite scene in the movie looking back on it. It was when the chase is over, everything is all good. They bring the dog back and they bring the baseball. And then Smalls and Benny go into Mr. Myrtle's house and have the discussion about the baseball. And then they understand Mr. Myrtle's past, how he played with the babe. And it was just, James Earl Jones is one of my favorite actors. He's a fantastic actor. I just love his even though it was his appearance was brief. It's such a I just love it. Hit that whole scene, and again, it's a great movie. It's a fun-loving family movie. And here's something I found out during about it in this past year at the 26th annual Family Film Awards. It was nominated in the category of Best Iconic Family Film. Ghostbusters
Hmm.
was the winner.
Oh.
So there's a little fun little fact about the movie. And yeah, it's a movie, like I said, it's a movie that made me when I was a kid, made me fall in love with baseball. And it'll be one of my favorites forever.
Yeah. Yeah, and with James Earl Jones, he's in a bunch of baseball movies, which is so
Mhm.
awesome, and with his voice and everything. And yeah, so with number four, I'm going to go with Angels in the Outfield. Again, I was watching it today, and it was kind of like a final decision. And but like the movie is so good, and it's kind of it's emotional for sure, because you're kind of seeing the POV from this kid who had lost his mother, and his father moves away, and his only wish is for the Angels to win the World Series so he can have a family again. And it's very touching. It's a wonderful story. And again, like the first like half hour of the movie is just straight up you're laughing at most of the scenes. It's so like, especially some of the dugout stuff and the fights and the manager interviews. It's hilarious, but it's a classic. I know. Again, it's kind of directed for the younger ages, but again, it's for everyone. And with in the music and everything, and some of the animation stuff, it makes you chuckle a little bit with like the Angels, like they're doing some funny stuff in the outfield. But it's a good classic. So I'm going with Angels in the Outfield at number four. And I guess if we want, we could do a snake, and then I go to number three, and you can do number three, or do you want to do number three? Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, go
Okay.
right ahead. That's fine if you
All
want to
right.
do that.
Let's do number three. Okay. Okay. This was a decision I made yesterday or a couple days ago. We got Augustin in the chat from Instagram. He says Rookie of the Year. That's a good movie. Um, Number three for me is, again, this was a decision I made yesterday. It is going to be 42. 42 was actually a movie I saw for the first time just about a year ago. I was at college in my dorm. I was like, kind of bored. I was like, you know what? I need to watch a movie, kind of relax from my homework, and I turned that on and watched it online. And man, it's very powerful. I mean, it tells a good story, and I know some people out there might not like it. I've heard some people say that it's kind of mixed, I guess, but I think majority of people like this movie, and it's again, it's powerful. It's very, there's a sad, view to it as well because it just shows you how rough it was for him to experience all the hate, all the racism he had, and just how bad. I mean, he had to move to different cities because he was getting death threats. In the scene, you can see a bunch of like all these letters of hate mail and death threats, and it just again, Harrison Ford, excellent actor. It kind of gives you that old baseball feeling to it, but also like down in the South during that time, 1920s, 1930s, that time period. It's a classic movie. It's great. And again, I think what you said, I think my favorite scene is when Reese walks over to him. The soundtrack, the music was just beautiful. Where he's looking up at the stand and saying, my family's from Louisville. I need them to know, that it's we're together on this. We're humans. We're people. We're the same. That we should be on the same level playing field as people. And it's a wonderful movie. A lot of there's some humor in it, but not as much. It's more of a telling a story. And it's an excellent story. And so, if for those who haven't watched it yet, highly recommend it. It's find it anywhere. It should be on Netflix or Disney Plus, whatever. I think it was. Was it made by Disney?
No, it was not. And actually, I just looked. I have this in front of me just in case anybody wants to watch it. It's currently available on HBO Max right now.
Okay.
If anyone has that, but no, it was not made by Disney.
Okay. Yeah, because I think there's another thing called, I think it's like the Jackie Robinson story that might be made by Disney, if I'm correct. I'm not 100% sure on that.
It might be. I think I remember correctly. PBS, the PBS network also did a short documentary. It was either on Jackie Robinson or it was on Willie Mays. I can't remember which one it was on.
Yeah.
But for those who have Max, 42 is currently available to watch on there, I believe.
Yeah. But again, it's a great movie. Very, very powerful. So go check that out. And it's not a super long movie either. It's a great movie. So go check that out.
Yeah. As I had on my number 5, one thing I'll add, I don't think some of the horrible acts of racism he experienced I think were toned down. That truly doesn't demonstrate what he truly faced, which is really sad. Just watching that is sad enough, but great movie. Like, I agree with you. It's a great movie. That's why it's good we both have it in our top 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the impact that he did even after baseball, before and after baseball, is just incredible. With a lot of these sports camps for black kids and black children, is just incredible. And it's just and in many ways, I kind of look up to him as a person, just trying to be better every single day. Whenever I go out there, work or whatever, or interact with people, I just want to be a better person. So again, great movie. He
paved the way for other legends like Hank Aaron, Willie Mays.
Yeah. Because without Jackie, they wouldn't play baseball. So, in many ways, he was the guy that kind of set baseball on the map for a lot of people.
Yeah. He wouldn't have allowed others like him, other people of African American descent, to have the chance to play in baseball.
Yeah. I think, was it Muhammad Ali kind of gave credit to Jackie for, I feel like there was an article or some quote that he had several years ago when he was boxing or whatever, and he kind of gave credit to Jackie, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So don't fact check me on that. So
Jackie Robinson Day is a day for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's my number 3. What's yours?
And of course, now they're no longer the Brooklyn Dodgers; they're now the LA Dodgers.
Yeah, yeah.
That's understanding the meaning behind the Dodgers should be in Brooklyn is a whole different discussion. There's some historical significance behind that. Anyway, it is a great movie. I recommend it to anyone. Number 3, this one is getting back to Kevin Costner, Bull Durham. For me, it's this movie. It's kind of even though it doesn't take place in the major leagues, it's around a minor league team. Which, by the way, he plays for the he plays for the Durham Bulls, which at the time they were not the minor league affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays. They were the minor league affiliate of the Atlanta Braves. Because remember, everyone, because in 1988 when the movie came out, the Tampa Bay Rays, well then Devil Rays, now Rays, were not even in existence yet. So this is back when, if you watch the movie, the Durham Bulls were part of the Atlanta Braves organization at the time. The thing about it is, I just like it. It's him and Tim Robbins, who is an up and coming hotshot young pitcher, and Kevin Costner plays the wily longtime veteran catcher, and they're paired together. Costner's character has to show Robbins' character the ropes and how to mature and behave and kind of not worry about all this, not worry about all the fame and fortune, understand that you're here to play the game. Just the relationship those two have is just, it kind of also cracks me up, but at the same time where there's the serious moments between the two of them, it really kind of just understands, it can be funny, but you have to be serious, because even when you're a minor league baseball player, it's your job,
Yeah.
and you want to also have fun doing it. And the Susan Sarandon character, she definitely, with the romance side of it, she definitely adds kind of an interesting little spin on it. I know I've had some friends of mine say they don't like her character so much, and other people do. But and again, because it creates kind of a bit of a love triangle between everybody.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite funny moments is one of the some of the meetings that Costner and Robbins' character have on the mound, such as when Robbins' dad is there and he's filming from behind. He's like, and it's just whole thing is funny. And one of my favorite what is it? My favorite line is when Costner says to Robin's character, "Come on, Rook, show us that $1 million arm, because I got a good idea about that 5-cent head of yours." So it's kind of a reformation. You can have all the raw talent in the world, but if you don't have the mind, raw talent can only take you so far as a professional athlete. And again, an interesting little fun fact about it: in 1989 Oscars, the movie was nominated for one Oscar, which is just originally was just on a screenplay, not any acting or best picture. But overall, it's a funny movie. It's a good movie, and one of my one moment that really gets me every time is that I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but that ending scene when Costner's in the manager's office and he's given the cold hard truth. It really does kind of, that's a more kind of perspective of things. But again, it's a great movie. I enjoy it, and that's my number 3 movie, Bull Durham.
Yeah, that movie kind of reminds me a little bit of For the Love of the Game, a little bit, I guess.
Another Costner film.
Yeah, like a lot of these characters are kind of like in the same movie. James Earl Jones, Kevin Costner, but for me, I know some people might not like this, but I wasn't a big fan of For the Love of the Game. I mean, I like some of the baseball parts of it. The other part, not so much. But it kind of like Bull Durham kind of reminded me of that. And and I know there's some like videos on YouTube where it kind of shows the bull in right field. I think in real life it's there, but it's in left field, I think. So that's kind of like a little Easter egg there.
Mm-hmm. No, that's correct. They just moved it front because in the movie it's on the right field wall.
Yeah.
Now it's in left field. I know that because White Sox, when he was a prospect, Luis Robert Jr. hit a monstrous home run, hit the bull and over the left field fence.
Yeah.
So when I said he hit the bull, he must get a free steak, and I'm not sure if that's still a thing, but
it could be. Hey, if somebody's watching or listening, give us a heads up on that. Do some research and let us know, because I'm curious, because I haven't done that. So okay, number 2. I'm gonna go Field of Dreams, because again, I watched this the other day. It's especially the ending. I mean, if a grown man hasn't cried, then I don't know what's going on, because that final scene is just amazing. There's some humor in that movie, but that last scene, man, it got me. It continues to get me, and it's just like you have I like the first part of the movie where the daughter's like, "Daddy, there's a man out in the field," and they're like. Their eyes are wide open, and walks out, and there's shoeless Joe Jackson, and like the first thing he does is of course he walks out to the plate, and he's trying to hit a fly ball or a ground ball to the outfield, and he just like bunts it because he's so nervous, and you can see his hand shake. And but yeah, I mean, again, I think there's that funny scene where he's talking about Ty Cobb. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's just so hilarious. I forget the exact line, but it like there's humor in there. And then I like the scene where he's at that whatever at that store, or almost like a Jack's, I guess, and he's getting some I believe, was it like soil? I think it was soil and some other stuff. Well, anyways, he's having this conversation with this other farmer. He's like, "Have you heard voices, out in the cornfield?" And they're like, "What voices? Like, are you mad?" And then all of a sudden he like, and the guy's like telling somebody else, like the cash registers, like the guy behind the cash register. He's like, "Yeah, Ray's hearing voices." He's like, "No, I'm not." And then all of a sudden, everybody's like looking at him, and they're like, and he's like, "Nah," he just walks out. But yeah, it's a great movie. I mean, it's a classic. It's such a great acting performance by Kevin Costner. But yeah, I mean, that ending, it gets me every single time, and it definitely deserves a top 3 for me. And I could have switched with 42 in Field of Dreams, but after I watched Field of Dreams, I'm like, you know what? It's getting my number 2. So I'm going with Field of Dreams at number 2.
Yeah, one of the things is I love, of course, when the players can walk out of the corn, and then again, White Sox fan here. Then
Yeah.
enjoyed how they moved that became so iconic. It was into the Field of Dreams game between the Yankees, where the players walked out of the field. It's such a great moment, but no, you can't go wrong with that. And another fun little fact is it was interesting the scene when they're in Fenway Park, and I look out into the monster. I thought, oh yeah, this is back when there was no seats on top of the monster, and you couldn't sit there in Fenway Park. That didn't come till later.
Yeah.
But anyway, number 2, I went back and forth kind of on my number 1 and 2 about ranking them, which one was 1 and which was 2. But these next 2 are my favorite baseball movies of all time. One and number 2, I'm going with Moneyball. It's just a movie that definitely, again, based off a book and based off true events, because I like during the movie, you're in the movie and then you go back and see flashbacks from that historic season for the Oakland A's when they were slowly climbing and climbing. And then just, of course, I like at the end in the last game where they show cuts and scenes from when Hatterberg's at bat. Of course, again, Scott Hatterberg in the movie, played by Chris Pratt, a very young Chris Pratt. And just how, of course, that iconic home run that continued the streak for the Oakland A's. Fun little fact about the movie: in 2012, it was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Actor in a Leading Role for Brad Pitt, and then Jonah Hill, for supporting actor. My favorite, and the thing is, my favorite funny moment, this will always resonate with me from the movie, when David Justice and Scott Hatterberg are in the break room, and Justice goes, "What's your biggest fear?" And Hatterberg goes, "A baseball hit in my general direction."
And
And he
he
goes,
just like laughs and he thinks it's a joke.
"Yeah."
And he's like, oh,
Last off, he
serious.
goes, "No, that's really it." And
Yeah.
he just walks away. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But one of my 2 favorite scenes will always be the meetings where he's meeting with the scouts, where he gives the famous line of, "There are rich teams, there are poor teams, then there's 50 feet of crap, then there's us." And it talks about it's an unfair game. And then, of course, he breaks the principle. You got to think differently. I love when he says, "If we try to play like the Yankees in here, we will lose to the Yankees
out there. Yeah.
and just speaking logic." And again, it just I think it puts into perspective how the game is today. That's the reality. There are rich teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers. Then there's I don't want to say poor teams, but just not so rich teams. Again, I wouldn't call a billion-dollar sports franchise poor by any stretch of the imagination. But then the Oakland A's, if you want, it just shows you if you want to succeed, you have to play and learn to operate within your own parameters. Again, I love Brad Pitt's performance, and I love Jonah Hill. It was interesting. I think that was one of Jonah Hill's, if not his first role, where he was known as kind of a serious dramatic actor. Again, prior, he was always in comedy roles and stuff like that. So definitely was a nice. I think he showed great range in this role. And again, got nominated for an Oscar. But it's a movie that it's definitely just a movie that I always enjoy. Oh, and another line, of course, that I have that I love when they're in the streak and they're teaching me, say, "Let them make the mistakes. When your enemy's making mistakes, don't interrupt them." And like he talks about bunting, they're giving you an out. Just take it. Say thank you. Don't be hero and just throw it to first. Don't be hero and try to go to second. But all in all, yeah, it's such a great movie. It's something I always enjoy, and yeah, that's my number 2, Moneyball.
Yeah, Moneyball is so good. It's my number 1. So, uh, yeah, I mean, me and my brother, I like almost every single day, we'll talk about Moneyball, and we'll do that scene where it's just like, all right, what's the problem? All right, we gotta get all these home runs and all these RBIs. What's the problem? And he's going through a bunch of these guys in the front office, and they're saying what they think the problem is. And then he gets to that line of where there are rich teams, and there are poor teams, and there whatever. And then he just kind of like, and then he's doing la 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 la. Like I just love that. It's so hilarious. And but yeah, it just like with that, like like the intro. I like how they kind of show the I forget how much money there was, but at the intro it kind of shows
Mhm.
the Yankees payroll versus the Athletics payroll, and it kind of
Mhm.
gets into that, again, like you said, flashback of the year before in the playoffs, and Johnny Damon, and then of course they were losing all those players, and then like the other part that I just chuckle at is like when he's in the car. I think it's like right after the game, and he's just like listening to the announcers or whoever the radio broadcasters
No,
were.
he's in the ballpark listening to the game.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when he's in the car, and
Oh,
I think it's a
yeah,
radio show or something, and then he just like throws it outside and he just
mhm,
like
sorry.
stomps on it. That was funny. And then, but and it's I guess it's kind of sad because okay, so the next day they were or like the next or during the off season they were taking down the signs outside the stadium.
Mhm.
Well, in real life we actually got that like a week or two ago because they just took down the rooted in Oakland sign outside the Coliseum. And when they were doing that, it kind of reminded me of Moneyball because they were doing that with Giambi and Isringhausen and Damon. But yeah, I mean with like Moneyball, it's the reason why it's my favorite because it kind of gets you inside. It's both. It kind of gives you more of a front office, but also analytical view of baseball, which
Mhm.
a lot of movies don't do. It's more of like a story of whether it's a romance story with Kevin Costner and somebody else, or it's kind of like whatever. But for this, it was kind of a new movie for for a lot of baseball people, kind of like a newer baseball movie that hadn't really been done before, and it just did super well. Um, and and then it just and then of course the last scene with well actually I got to get to this point too because I actually found this out not too long ago. So Scott Hatterbury, obviously in the movie, you've realized that he's like, I think one of the front office people have said he's been cut by half the teams in baseball and nobody really wants him. Well, actually, and this
Because of
is
his
true.
elbow. Yeah, because of his elbow.
Yeah, because of his elbow. Well, actually, this is a true story. So apparently, and this is kind of a cool fact. So apparently, right before he got signed by the Oakland Athletics, which you see in the movie, which he
Mhm.
goes to his his house and gives him the contract and all that. Well, actually, apparently, within I think was it a couple days or something like that, the last team that had given him a contract or at least had Hatterberg was the Rockies. The Rockies had him for like a very brief period of time, whether it was like an hour or a day or two. But the Rockies, I think they picked him off waivers and they like released him. And so when you see Hatterberg in Moneyball, he had just been, I think, released by the Rockies. And then he goes to the Athletics. So I thought that was kind of cool, a little nugget there. And then, of course, the ending is really, really cool with the 20 game winning streak and for them to go to the playoffs without some of the big three guys that they had the year before. And you had that scene with I forget the actor's name, but he's telling him, you built a playoff team with all this money with and the Yankees, you and the Yankees had the same amount of wins, but the Yankees spent more money than you guys did. And it's a really cool scene. And and again, it's kind of cool that they shot that in Fenway and how they were able to actually shoot, multiple, stuff out of, the Coliseum and everything. So yeah, overall great movie. Moneyball again, it's excellent. And it's easily my number one for me.
Yeah, that was you're talking during his meeting with John Henry, the Red Sox owner, who was the Red Sox owner then and now. And I just thought back to one of the interesting moments that you always got to think back to and understand when he's in the owner's office. He says, "I need more money, Steve."
I
And
need more
the
money.
fact that happens at the end of every offseason. You have the GM sits down with the owner, like, "Here's your budget. Here's what you have. You got to figure out how to win with this budget." And then I remember when he goes home and he gets a phone call, he's talking to Giambi's agent about the offer and you're trying to make sure he doesn't go to the Yankees, which of course he ends
No,
up
you
doing.
did not.
Then he gets a call from Scott, who actually is Scott Boras, because Scott Boras was Johnny Damon's agent at the time. And of course, we understand Scott Boras is because, all that stuff. And that's of course how Johnny Damon ended up going to the A's. And, congratulations, you know what? You win. That's of course how some conversations with agents can go. But no, it's a great movie. I love it too.
Yeah.
And also rest in peace, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who played R. Howell in the movie.
Mhm.
And again, like I said, Moneyball I was contemplating with that. Another movie is my number one. My number one movie, oh boy, it's a good mixture of enjoying baseball and comedy. Major League. It's interesting when I first saw the movie back when I was in my early years of college, and I just always fell in love with the fact between some of the comedy, there was adult humor. I love the romance story between Tom Berenger's character and Rene Russo's character. I think it's an enjoyable on-screen romance, and and again, the sequels are just horrible. I recommend don't waste your time on Major League 2 or Major League Back to the Minors. Just watch Major League and enjoy it for what it is. You have a good romance story, like I said, and a good cast sporting characters. I mean, Charlie Sheen is quite as the hothead young pitcher who's just come out of jail to join the team, and I love Wesley Snipes as Willie Mays Hayes, and what's his name? Allstate, known for the Allstate commercials. Dennis Haber playing Pedro Serrano, and I do love the manager. I can't remember the actor's name. Lou Brown is the character's name. I can't remember the actor's name for the life of me. And I just love
Yeah.
how you have an owner she's loved to hate. And again, this was back when they were the Cleveland Indians. Now they're the Cleveland Guardians.
Mhm.
It's just I also one of my favorite scenes is always when Charlie Sheen is like with the glasses, everything comes out to that Wild Thing song. The whole stadium's chanting Wild Thing. And I just love it. That just gets you pumped up and going, all that stuff. And my favorite funny moment is when they say Serrano's looking to sacrifice a live chicken for some power before the game. And so Tom Berenger's character brings him a bucket of KFC chicken.
Yeah.
Here's a whole bucket of chicken, a bucket of live chicken, just like you asked
Yeah.
for. And then later in the game, he goes, "Should have gotten a live chicken."
Somebody's got to do
uh,
that in their like a real life game. Like we got to see that like at a Rockies game or a minor league game. Like for those, if any prospects are listening to this, you should do that. Like just just come up with a bucket of chicken.
a bucket,
Yeah,
or it's like
KFC chicken.
or just get like a little Joe Boo, you can buy it as a collectible, a little Joe
Yeah.
Boo statue and kind of thing, and
Yeah.
bring him a cigar, and you're like, bring a cigar and rum for extra power. And then I like the one pitcher goes, I say, bartender, Joe Boo needs a refill, and the bat just hits him, and then
Yeah.
again, it's like I said, it's the original Major League, like I said, it's a great mixture of
It's so
comedy.
good,
So
yeah.
just like I love the announcer, who by the way was the longtime announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers. And a fun fact I found out about the story: the baseball scenes for their home games were not filmed at Cleveland. They were actually filmed in the old Milwaukee baseball stadium. I think it was called Milwaukee Municipal Stadium was where they filmed it. So a little bit of a fun fact. And that's of course how I guess the connection with the announcer, what he used to do the Brewers games. And so one of the famous lines I always love, he says, "Just a bit outside," or like it's just so funny. And again, it's a movie that definitely for me the comedy mix is good with me. And I just like the baseball aspect of it, and especially when you look back at what baseball was like in the late '80s, where they had those high stirrup long socks, and everybody was wearing basically everybody was wearing Franklin batting gloves, or Franklin or Wilson batting gloves back then.
Now it's Nike, and
You got Nike, you got Under Armour, Adidas. It's just like, because again, and Nike was really still not known at all, because that was during the rise of the very early parts of Michael Jordan's career. So, but yeah, again, that's my number one. Major League is my number one.
Yeah, that's a good pick. And actually, I was just thinking about this because since I recently watched this, I thought it was really cool that Vinny Scully was in For the Love of the Game. It's just like I think that's one of the only movies I know. I want to say, well, his character was supposed to be in 42 but it was a younger guy. But I thought it was like really cool that they had Vinny Scully in there as well. In that movie, and then Billy Chapel. Of course, in real life, I think he wore the turtleneck and all that, which you don't see a lot nowadays. I mean, some days, especially if it's cold, I know sometimes Ryan McMahon would wear a turtleneck, which again, you don't see that a lot anymore. But I thought that was really cool. But yeah, that's a really good top five, because I Major League was definitely up there, but like I don't know, it just with the top five I had, I was like, you know what, these for me at least, these are my movies. So yeah, that's a great list, and again, I think. Again, I guess there's some scenes. I guess for Major League, there's like, I mean, it's not meant for everyone, but there's.
No.
I think isn't there a scene for like, I guess I'm not. Hopefully, I don't get like, this video doesn't get taken down. But isn't there a scene where he kind of like does the number one on home plate or something? Like, there's a scene because I haven't seen it in a while. But
no! Well, first of all, real quick, Bob Uecker, that was the name of the announcer. I couldn't remember that. I tried to say it, but yeah, he was longtime Milwaukee announcer. I want to make sure I get his name correct in there. No, it was during spring training. One of the players complaining about something that the manager wants to do.
Yeah.
He's like, "I got it right here in my contract. I shouldn't do any calisthenics. I don't think are necessary." And then Lou Brown, the manager, he goes, "What do you think of that?" And Lou Brown takes the contract, throws it on the ground, and just takes a leak on it. So that was just like that's just
my
the
favorite part of the entire movie.
It's just the manager's way of saying, "I don't care what your contract says. Do what I tell you. I'm the manager."
Yeah. And like in softball, because I played, softball, and I remember we would teach because, we had to kind of pay a fee to play softball on the softball team. And I remember some of us guys, we were like joking about it. It's like, I'm being paid, we have to pay $50. So, you should be paying us. But yeah, that by far is my most favorite scene in the entire movie. And I don't know why. I always chuckle at it. It's just like, kind of reminds me of when I was playing softball. But anyways, but yeah, excellent top five. I'm curious to see what other people. So again, if you're watching and listening, give us your top five, like whether in the comments
Mhm.
or whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, you name it. Just like let us know what your top five are. Like Tom and me, we're curious to see what they are. But yeah, so again, if I go back, I think I had what was it, Eight Men Out, and then I had Angels in the Outfield, 42, Field of Dreams, and then Moneyball.
Yep, and my top 5 recap, 5 was 42, number
Mhm.
4 was Sandlot, number 3, Bull Durham, number 2, Moneyball, and number 1, Major League.
Yeah. It'd be like because okay, so Patrick Lyons, he came out with a tweet the other day and he was talking about a documentary, like, or if like because I know the Red Sox, they're kind of doing one right now. It's kind of like a
Oh,
version of a Hard Knocks. But if there was ever like a documentary, another documentary like that, it'd be kind of cool if there was some type of, I know again they already kind of did one with the Rockies in '07, but it'd be kind of fun if they actually did like a much more in-depth look at the Rockies in '07, if they did something like that. So that'd be kind of cool, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
I think you're referring to, well, first of all, for anybody who has ESPN Plus, there's a 30 for 30 called 4 Days in October, which covers the big comeback against the Yankees in the
mm,
2004 ALCS. Netflix and the Red Sox recently announced they're going to do some kind of baseball's version of Hard Knocks for.
mm,
I don't think it's, I think it's this, I believe it's this season. I'm not sure. I have to look back at what it was. And I know they're doing
yeah,
another documentary about the 2004 team. But yeah, that would be great because again, it's one of the most famous seasons in Rockies history. I would love to see more in depth behind the scene. If that, of course, that video footage is somehow available, that would be awesome.
yeah. Yeah, again, I mean, they could use some of the footage from 21 Days, but again, I don't think it was like necessarily a huge like release necessarily. Like I just know that I want to say it was like released by local channels and it was made by like a local like network. But again, it would be kind of cool if like Netflix or somebody did kind of like a 2007 Rockies thing and
Mhm.
talk about like the '07 run or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. Or probably not a movie because again, there hasn't been a whole lot of like big moments in Rockies history that deserves that credit. However, I mean, there is a possibility they could do something like that. Talk about the crazy September run. I think that'd be kind of cool. But again, it's like because it's instead of because there were so many great moments in between that time period from September to October, right? I mean, it would understand if there was like one single moment. I mean, you couldn't really do. I mean, you could, but probably wouldn't be able to do like Todd Helton's walk off home run. How even though that was a great game and all that, but I think with the Rockies and what happened in '07, it definitely I think it would deserve more of a documentary rather than a movie. So.
No,
Um,
well, if it's made into a movie, I was thinking about this while you were talking. Who would be a good actor to play Todd Helton? I'm not sure
Yeah.
if I'm not sure if this guy's left hand. I got one in mind if anybody's interested.
Ooh.
I'm not sure if he's left handed. I have to look it up. Josh Brolin. I think he'd
Mm,
be. I think that'd be a pretty
yeah.
good
I
idea
can
for
see the
Todd.
similarities because he actually has a goatee, or at
Yeah.
least he's had one.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of interesting. You think Thanos every time you look if you watch the movie, but I have to look it up if
He's
he's
purple.
left-handed.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
yeah, if he's purple, Rocky's purple. There you go.
Yeah.
Um, but I can't remember. I don't know. I have to look it up if he's left-handed. But I think when if in a movie, if I see him, I could think Todd Helton. With like you
Mhm.
said, the beard, a little bit of a wavy hair. I
Yeah.
could definitely buy him playing Todd Helton.
Yeah. Josh Brolin, if you're hearing this, please be Todd Helton. That'd
Get
be kind of cool.
and yeah,
Just like
but
let us know, just like comment or just follow us, and we'll get to. Or maybe we should just like hit him up and just say, hey, would you be willing to play as Todd Helton in a documentary that we're making? But
and
the
then
question, yeah, and then we have to get like, well, here's the thing. Clint Hurdle, if you've seen Clint Hurdle, he
mm,
looks. I know he's aged a little bit, but like Clint Hurdle, he
mm,
could probably still play as the manager. Like still looks good at
yeah,
his age. It'd be
yeah,
kind of cool.
mm,
But the problem is, some of the other players, you probably wouldn't be able to do it because a lot of them have added weight, or either they're busy, no offense to Todd, but Todd has kind of gotten some weight over the last few years since he's retired,
well,
and I don't
that
think
happens when you retire, that kinda
yeah,
happens
that
sometimes.
happens.
So
I mean,
it's yeah.
even again, since we're talking about movies, even the movie For the Love of the Game, Billy Chapel is kind of looking at himself in the mirror. And he's like looking at his fat, like the day of his final game.
But
But yeah, it's just like you know what?
Mm.
Maybe I don't know, but again,
I
Todd
have
would
to.
have to get out of retirement and then have to work out and then start doing these things. But yeah,
Well, it's
Josh
interesting.
Brolin is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's yeah. I think of these things because back in the Chicago Tribune, when we had a pretty good run of championships from during the time period, they would what the Tribune would do is when one of its teams would win a championship or have a phenomenal season, like for example, when the White Sox won the World Series in 2005. I can't remember who the writer was, but they broke down what famous actors they think should play so and so person, like just the famous players. Like for Paul Konerko, first baseman, they had Tim McGraw, and for Ozzie Guillen, the very outspoken manager, they actually had that Hispanic gentleman who played Eva Longoria's husband on Desperate Housewives. I thought that's a pretty good one. That's actually a pretty good one. That's a pretty good
I've seen
choice
that one.
there.
I've seen it.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I could think of it is interesting to ponder these things if you ever make a movie about a real life kind of thing, or if there's a documentary. Maybe they could start a documentary series like famous like seasons in baseball, that underrated seasons nobody talks about. In 2007, Rockies could be one of them.
Yeah. I mean, if it would be kind of, I mean, again, nothing much happened in the, you know, late 1990s, but it would be kind of cool to see something related to, or maybe if they don't do a, like a Netflix show or something about the 2007 Rockies, just do one about the Blake Street Bombers. Like do
Mhm.
one about that. It would be kind of cool. But again, there's like not a lot of like incredible moments necessarily. I mean, again, I mean these guys were power hitters, but there weren't like playoff games that were being played. But I mean, it would be again, it would be kind of cool to see something like that. I mean, maybe eventually with this like Hard Knocks type of series or thing
Mhm.
going on with Netflix with the Red Sox, I would imagine that they're gonna kind of do that with like one team, because I know Netflix is starting to get into the business of sports and
Mhm.
and doing stuff like that. So it'd be kind of cool. Maybe eventually down the line they'll get to the Rockies and but again
Uh,
they're probably going to have to go through some of the big teams like the Red Sox, Yankees, Dodgers, and then they'll get to the other teams last. But again, it would be something to look forward to. But if it wasn't like 2007, I'd definitely do something like maybe related to the Blake Street Bombers or Todd and the Toddlers in the early 2000s. That would be kind of cool, of
mhm.
like how the Rockies were able to build up that team to where they got to in 2007.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider. I mean, yeah,
Mm,
I mean, it'll be. I think with the Netflix Hard Knocks baseball style thing,
yeah.
I can imagine it'd be just like the NFL Hard Knocks, where it changes teams season to season. But again, early, we'll have to see how the when with of course, with the regional streaming networks, with the regional sports networks issue still going on, and all these streaming services kind of getting to bid in the game, such as I know Amazon is trying to really get into the game. Netflix is right now just starting to get into the live sports stuff, with WWE Raw being the broadcast for them next year in 2025, and of course they're going to broadcast the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight.
Mm.
It's going to be interesting to see how things change with not just live sports broadcasting, but at the same time, what's the future of the 30 for 30s with on ESPN? Again, it's really interesting to think about. Especially, it'd be nice, like as we were talking about now, it would be really nice to see the Rockies get into the mix when it comes. Again, they're one of the younger franchises in baseball, but still,
Mhm.
there's stories in the team history to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and again, just like looking back at Rockies history, again, there's like unfortunately, and the Rockies are, I mean, they're a younger team. I mean, they've only been around for about 30 years, 31 years. So, there's just like not a lot of stuff you can talk about except like
Mhm.
2007 with the Rockies. But again, it would be kind of cool if like one day they kind of get to that point to where they start making content and they get to each team, they could talk about, you know, some of the big moments, or whatever, or just kind of like do, because I think with what they're doing with the Red Sox, I think it's like spring training or something like that. So, um,
I think it goes into the season too.
season, okay, okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, so yeah, just like something, or because with the Rockies, with the way they are right now, kind of in that rebuild stage, it'd be kind of cool that maybe next year it could be the Rockies, and to kind of see what the rebuild kind of looks like with the Rockies, with the prospects. And again, we're probably not going to get, again, this is going to be mainly we're going to end here in just a second, but we were thinking about talking about the prospects, the top 30 prospects that just got released. But I will say this though, because you and me, we were talking about this before, earlier today, that according to MLB Pipeline, they rank the Rockies as I think the 21st best farm system in baseball. And last year they were like right around the middle of the pack, 14, 15, I think, or 16.
Mhm.
And for me, at least, it doesn't make sense because it's just like, well, the Rockies, they didn't get rid of anybody in the farm system and they made additions. And not to mention they had a pretty good draft last year. It just doesn't make sense. Like, how in the world did they move backward? And, it just, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. And it's just like, I feel like this farm system gets zero credit for what they do because just like, I think that like we've mentioned many times before, and I think we mentioned it with Lake Street Banner with Lewis a few weeks ago. I just feel like this farm system is uh, underrated, man. It's just it's really like this morning I was just like, what am I looking at? It was just like the Rockies are 21st best farm system. I agree that it should be somewhere in the middle of the pack still. I mean, I still think that there needs to be improvements in the farm system, that the Rockies need more pitchers in the draft, but there's kind of a good mix though and I think you tweeted out today, there's a good mix of both hitters and pitchers in the Rockies farm system, and it's just like, for me, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's split down the middle with 15 and 15. Chase Dollander is the only one in the top 10 of their
Mhm.
rankings, their team rankings, excuse me. Um, in preparation for our next episode, I'm going to look into, again, nobody really graduated as far as, or they didn't trade anybody away. They only traded to acquire new ones, such as
Mhm.
Vodnik's a new one. He's still in the top 30. Um, but again, I'll take a look and see the comparisons of the ones around, who added, who subtracted, as maybe that's why their ranking went down. But again, next episode, I'll go take a deeper dive into that about next year's episode. Maybe I'll ask Blake Street Banner if they can provide any guidance on such and everything of when I develop my own opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, and speaking, well, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, no, yeah, but yeah, either way. But again, it was an enjoyable thing to watch all these new baseball movies. Any ones I
Yeah,
haven't seen in a while, they kind of
yeah,
refresh my memory. But
yeah,
altogether, yeah, I enjoyed this episode and
yeah.
looking forward to next episodes. I'm looking forward to a new season for sure. But this is a
Mhm.
fun episode. I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed going through reminiscing about Hollywood and the documentary reminiscence of baseball. It's always definitely reminds me how much I love this sport.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So next week, again, we might get into this or we might not, but we might quickly look at the top 15 or top 10 prospects instead of the top 30. But really, the big thing next week for us on the podcast is that we're going to be doing our 2024 MLB standing slash rankings. So we'll be kind of predicting where each team will rank at the end of the season. And we should be posting that right around the time we record or maybe a little bit after that. But also, so again, if you're watching this later, you'll probably see something about our top 5 movies. They'll be on our pages, so we'll get to work on that. But so yeah, stay tuned for next week. That podcast should be fun. We're gonna rank a lot of the teams. We're gonna kind of have a discussion about each team. Quick discussion. We don't want to get into like an hour or 2 hours because we really could if we wanted to, but to save you guys time, we're gonna kind of cut it short there. And then after that, we're gonna I think it's our season preview podcast,
Mhm.
which is our kind of like our last big one before the season starts. And then when the season starts, we kind of get into our regular grind of doing our Rockies review podcast, which is again is going to be about 3 to 5 minutes, just talking about game highlights and stuff. So
Mhm.
really looking forward to that. So um, I think that
And,
will conclude. Oh, go ahead.
mhm. Oh, no, go ahead. I
Oh,
was all
okay.
good.
Yeah.
We have our Rockies recap episodes coming up after each game, so stay
Yep.
tuned for more information on that. I'm really excited about doing those.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, again, so make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and I think, well, I know there's a lot of stuff going on TikTok. We're still on TikTok, so if you have a TikTok, follow us there because we're trying to get some more content out there as well. So, but yeah, I think that will conclude this episode of the Rockies Now podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, follow, rate, and review all of our social media pages. We love hearing from all of our wonderful listeners. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the podcast. Have a great day, everyone. And as always, go Rockies.